BNA is complete, which means it's time for that full review I promised everyone. Boy, howdy did that 12 episodes fly right by, leaving me with very little time to actually put this review together, in fact. Luckily, I'm still waiting out the current toilet paper pandemic in a safe location, so I won't have any distractions. Story. Furry girl goes to Furryville, but it turns out she was still human up until just a few days ago. In her search for a cure for her furry degeneracy, she gets caught up in a triangular citywide struggle between the city's tiny governing body, Big Pharma run by a blonde man in a trigger anime, and terrorists from Rainforest armed with Bibles and loaded diapers. While you may think this may be a lot for an 18-year-old Tanuki girl to be able to influence or handle, this is a trigger anime, and therefore, you'd be fucking wrong. While it's true that I waifu Michiru Kagemori pretty hard, no woman or anime is perfect. And with anime, just like women, the best approach to discussing their flaws is always a long-winded YouTube video. From beginning to end of BNA, Michiru is behind 7 layers of plot armor, and every impossible situation she falls into is remedied, in the end, by some sudden new mutation. There's even a scene in this anime where she's falling from a building and suddenly grows fucking wings. And while there is an explanation for why her and Nazuna are able to mutate in these ways, it does sort of suck out every fluid ounce of tension from anything involving them, which is about 90% of the story. Speaking of mutations and tension, it turns out that Ogami actually is a 1,000-plus-year-old furry admin. And if I spoiled that for you, before you go crying in the comments, just know that it's flat out given away in episode 1. What's not given away in episode 1 is that the blonde man from the Trigger anime is actually a villain, and also a furry admin himself. Spoiler alert. And if you didn't see this coming, you clearly don't know what blonde hair means in a Trigger anime. Not only is Mr. Blonde an admin, he's a purebred admin, which somehow not only makes him more powerful, but also gives him 3 independent heads in his beast form. Purebred is starting to sound a little more like royal bread by the minute. Anyway, it turns out that this is also fake news, as he is not the hero of the story, and so must be defeated by the power of spirit bomb friendship by the end of it, which is literally how the villain is defeated at the end of the story. Now, that's not to say that the story of BNA is bad. It's just that it's very clear that the characters and setting are designed first, and the story is an afterthought. But what else have we come to expect from our friends at Studio Trigger? And even though the plot does feel like an afterthought, Trigger animes are still almost always worth more than the sum of their parts. They do absolutely string some events together that are fun to watch unfold, and some memorable situations. There's even a particular scene in BNA where, because of a misunderstanding between the 2 main characters, Michiru pulls a fucking gun on Ogami to try and stop him from interfering with a concert Nazuna is performing in. This was, in my experience, the most tense scene in the entire anime, mainly because you have 2 plot-armored heroes that are pitted against each other, both 100% convinced that their fatwa is justified and holy, and both trying to influence a huge pivotal event in the story in 2 opposing ways. Now, heroes being put at odds with one another hasn't really been a rare thing ever since Marvel's Civil War films, but regardless, as long as it's not overdone in a single story, it can still provide some good organic tension. Overall, I'd say the story is mediocre at best. It's not terrible, and it doesn't subtract much from the overall experience. Characters. The characters in a Trigger anime are always where the studio shines brightest. Now, I've already covered Michiru and Ogami in the preview for BNA, but here's a quick rundown just in case you missed that video. Michiru, a young human girl who was somehow suddenly turned into a Tanuki beastman, who has no memory of why or how this happened. She's cute, she's spunky, and she's the current love of my life, at least as far as anime girls go. 11 out of 10. Would furiously pet, feed from the table, and brush every day. Ogami, an old furry god who has been around for millennia, who somehow alone absorbed all the sweat and cum from the other fursuiters thousands of years ago when the Romans decided they had had quite enough of these faggot furries. Nearly indestructible, cold, quiet, and single-minded. 10 out of 10, would pet and feed steak. And those are pretty much all the characters of any consequence. There is, of course, Mari the Weasel, a profiteer and entrepreneur of the animosity underground. Cool, calculated, and cheerfully condescending. Loves being called a weasel. Has cool hair and cool shades. 8 out of 10. Would pet while holding my wallet, of course. There is also the stereotypical blonde white villain that I mentioned before. I don't remember his name, and you probably won't either. But what is there really to say other than he's blonde, he's rich, and manipulative. And just when you think that's all he has going for him, he turns into a shiny gold Cerberus monster. Everyone in town, even Ogami with his godlike sniffer that can somehow smell things through time, believes him to be a stinky human. But in a pretty bland and frankly expected twist, it turns out they do actually have to fight him Dragon Ball Z style by the end of the anime. 4 out of 10. Stay outside. There's also Nazuna, Michiru's friend from before they both became furry. She has aspirations of becoming a J-pop idol, but instead, in what I believe to be an unintentional allegory for real life, becomes a cult idol. She does actually get to be in a concert by the end, however, where they sing the song from the ending of BNA. Very meta. But it's all a ruse to suddenly reveal to the beastman of animosity that she's actually been a human BuzzFeed reporter this entire time. To which the beastmen react accordingly. She's pompous, but she's kind. More cool-headed than Michiru, but also caught up in her newfound e-fame. 6 out of 10. Someone else will adopt her. There's also a mayor character who survived the Furry Showa, meaning that this world shares at least some parts of the IRL world's history. But other than that, she's not very interesting, and is basically just an exposition dumper and authority figure. Everyone else is either so minor or inconsequential that they'll be forgotten soon after you finish the show entirely. A few even hold up the plot more than really revealing anything or moving the interesting parts of the story forward. As I said before, visuals. Nothing has changed since I previewed this anime really. From the first to the last episode, the colors, animation, characters, and set pieces all have that wonderful stylized minimalist art style that Trigger is famous for. There's nothing really to complain about as far as the visuals without nitpicking. And even though I am notorious for relentlessly picking nits, this anime is so strikingly gorgeous that it would just be pointless and gay to complain about what's wrong with the visuals. Sound effects and voice work on this anime are crisp and clean, but nothing particularly special. Industry standard, if you will. The music, however, bops like fuck, and I fucking love it. The music doesn't change much throughout the series. There's even a scene where the girls are singing the song at the ending of the anime in the car together when they hear it come on the radio. Which, even though the song is incredible, it's still a little jarring to hear it in that way within that world. Still, this is the only anime that's ever sent me on a hunt for an official OST. So what's the verdict? BNA was created with many problems that it solves about itself, which is not a thing I can say for many products. It only has a few memorable characters, but those characters are extremely memorable and fun to watch and already have tons of incredible art by some of the internet's top artists. The plot stops and goes like a fucking YouTube poop, but it never really seems to matter much. The story is compact in a way that even though it stops and goes, you don't lose much interest in what's happening. And at 12 episodes, it doesn't overstay its welcome like those anime that go on until the creator dies or someone goes broke. BNA leaves you wanting more, and that's the perfect way to end a series like this. It has a very cliche and schlock ending, but the visuals, sound work, and investments that you develop for the characters and the city sort of negate any real disappointment you might otherwise have about the ending. A wise man once said long ago, BNA is worth more than the sum of its parts, and that still rings true today. It's hard to put into words the aesthetic appeal of the experience as a whole, because aesthetics by definition are hard to describe in words, and therefore I highly recommend you watch a few episodes of this show. I think most of you will like it, though if you're not hooked by episode 2, you probably won't like it. And you can feel free to leave a nasty comment on my YouTube video and dislike it, guilt-free. But for those of us without Brazilian brainworms, I truly feel this will be an easy entry into a lot of people's top 10. I said it before and I'll say it again. Find it, watch it, and for God's sake, draw more Michiru art and send it to me on Twitter. As always, a grossly incandescent thank you to those tithing at the Temple of the Sun. Your thoughts and prayers may not help a single victim of the world, but this month they did help me pay my city's water company so that I can stay hydrated and clean, preventing my untimely death from disease and my chameleon from dehydration. Truly, you are all a blessing, even you. And if you've run out of quarantine watch material, you can check out the gaming channel me and my friend Gabe are doing together. It's still very rough, but I think you'll find some of it entertaining regardless. More to come very soon.